This story is titled, Her Buddy Requested Me to Assist with Props at the Photo Studio, but when I arrived, I found my fiancé embracing another man. It's just for the photo shoot because he's more attractive than you, she said, so I simply disappeared. But soon she was on her knees at my doorstep with tears in her eyes. Hey Reddit, my name is Marcus, and I'm 28 years old. I thought I was just showing up to do some couple shots with my girlfriend at what I assumed would be a simple photo session. Instead, when I arrived, she was already wrapped around some male model like I didn't even exist. When I asked what was going on, she actually laughed and told me I wasn't photogenic enough for the shoot. I left without saying a word, and within a week, her career was completely in flames while she was desperately begging me to fix the mess she'd created. Here's exactly how that all played out. I grew up in a typical middle-class suburb with parents who took education seriously. My dad taught high school chemistry, while my mom worked as a school counselor. Both of them pushed academic excellence hard, but my dad was especially intense about it. Every single time I brought home anything less than an A on a test or assignment, he would sit me down at our kitchen table and we'd work through problems together until I completely understood the material. Those late-night study sessions with my father, often stretching past midnight, are probably the main reason I eventually ended up pursuing a career in cybersecurity. My older sister Riley was always the social butterfly of our family. She's 3 years ahead of me in school and was the type of person who seemed to know everyone and everything that was happening around campus. While I spent most of my free time taking apart old computers in our basement and trying to figure out how they worked, Riley was busy organizing school events and managing social committees. These days, she works in marketing up in Chicago, and we still talk almost daily over the phone. She's always had incredibly good instincts about reading people and their true motivations, which is apparently a skill I somehow missed out on inheriting. I managed to get through state university on academic scholarships, earning my computer science degree with a specialized focus in cybersecurity. I graduated with minimal student debt, though I spent most of those 4 years living on a steady diet of pizza and Monster energy drinks while coding until 3 in the morning most nights. All that hard work paid off when I graduated with a 3.8 GPA, which opened doors for me in the tech industry. After college, I spent 6 long years grinding away at a soul-crushing corporate cybersecurity job. The pay was decent enough, but I was basically functioning as a code monkey, just implementing other people's security protocols without any real creative input. My cubicle was decorated with 2 dying succulents that I could never keep alive and a single framed photo of my parents from my graduation day. I saved almost everything I earned during those years, living as frugally as possible. My one major splurge was my 2015 Honda Civic Si, which I found used with only 35,000 miles on it. The car was championship white with a small scratch on the rear bumper that I never bothered to get fixed. My dad thought it was an impractical purchase and questioned why I needed a sports car when a regular sedan would serve the same purpose. But that Civic Si was the first thing I'd ever bought that wasn't purely functional, and it represented a kind of freedom to me that I'd never experienced before. I spent most of my weekends either detailing it meticulously or making small performance upgrades like a cold air intake and short throw shifter. Nothing too crazy or expensive, just enough modifications to make it feel uniquely mine. When I was 25, my old college roommate Trevor reached out to me with an idea that would change everything. We had stayed in touch over the years, grabbing burgers every few months to complain about our respective dead-end jobs and dream about something better. Trevor had been developing this concept about using artificial intelligence to detect cyber attacks and data breaches more effectively than traditional methods. This was back in 2019, when AI security applications were just starting to gain mainstream attention in the tech industry. We both made the terrifying decision to quit our stable corporate jobs on the exact same Tuesday and officially launched our startup together. We started operations in Trevor's cramped garage apartment, with him handling the machine learning background and complex algorithms while I focused on the back-end architecture and security protocols. For the first 8 months, we lived entirely off our personal savings and worked grueling 19-hour days, 7 days a week. My beloved Civic Si just sat gathering dust in the apartment complex parking spot because we barely had time to leave Trevor's place, let alone go for recreational drives. During those early startup days, my entire wardrobe essentially became a collection of banned t-shirts and worn jeans, which served as my unofficial uniform. Who had time to think about fashion or appearance when we were trying to build something revolutionary from nothing? We survived on takeout food, energy drinks, and pure determination. By our third year in business, we finally had a functioning prototype that caught the attention of CyberShield, which obviously isn't the real company name I'm using here. CyberShield supplies sophisticated security software solutions to major financial institutions across the country, so getting their attention was huge for us. Their initial contact email arrived on a Wednesday morning, and Trevor and I literally stared at it on the screen for 15 minutes straight before we worked up the courage to respond. We were genuinely afraid that if we touched it or replied too quickly, the opportunity might somehow disappear, like a mirage. It was right around this time, when our CyberShield negotiations were just beginning to get serious, that I met Victoria. She was 27 and completely out of my league in every conventional sense. She had that Instagram-perfect appearance that requires 4 hours of preparation time just to look effortlessly beautiful. Victoria worked as a senior event planner for Elite Events, a high-end company that specialized in coordinating executive retreats and corporate functions for wealthy clients. Her job was the type where knowing the right people and making the right connections mattered significantly more than any actual technical skills or expertise. She had this habit of casually dropping names of semi-famous people she had encountered through her work, treating these interactions like they were completely normal occurrences. For example, she would say things like, "Oh, when I handled that major tech conference last month, Bezos's people were incredibly demanding about the specific room setup and catering arrangements." She delivered these comments with such practiced nonchalance, as if rubbing shoulders with billionaires' assistants was just another Tuesday for her. When Victoria first approached me at the networking event where we met, I honestly thought she was looking for someone standing directly behind me. There was no logical reason why someone who looked like her would be interested in someone who looked like me. Our very first conversation was about the shrimp cocktail appetizers at the event, which seems ridiculous in retrospect. But she actually laughed at my awkward jokes and seemed genuinely interested when I tried to explain my cybersecurity work in terms that wouldn't bore a normal person to death. She asked for my phone number before leaving that night, and our first official date was at this incredibly upscale restaurant downtown, where the menu didn't even list prices next to the dishes. Within 6 weeks of dating, we were officially together as a couple. Throughout those early weeks, I kept waiting for her to realize she had made some kind of terrible mistake and was dating someone completely beneath her usual standards. My sister Riley met Victoria when she visited from Chicago for a long weekend, about 2 months into our relationship. We all went to dinner at this fancy steakhouse that Victoria had specifically recommended. And throughout the evening, Victoria was absolutely charming. She asked all the right questions about Riley's marketing job and her life in Chicago, showing what seemed like genuine interest in getting to know my family better. But later that night, after we had returned to my apartment, Riley pulled me aside while Victoria was in the bathroom. "That girl is as fake as her spray tan, Marcus," she said in that brutally honest way that only siblings can get away with without causing a major fight. I immediately brushed off her concerns as typical sister drama and protectiveness. "You've spent like 4 hours with her, Riley," I replied defensively. "She's just polished and put together. Not everyone is as naturally laid back as you are." Riley gave me that specific look, the exact same expression she had given me when I was 17 and about to sneak out to a party that ended up getting busted by the cops just 2 hours later. "Just watch how she talks about you to other people when she thinks you're not paying attention," she warned me. Trust me on this one, Marcus. Of course, I made the classic mistake of not listening to my sister's advice. She has been absolutely right about every single girlfriend I've had since high school, but I was too infatuated to see what was right in front of me. After 18 months of being together, the red flags in our relationship had become practically neon signs that were impossible to ignore. Victoria would introduce me to her friends and colleagues with these subtle qualifiers that always made me feel diminished. "This is Marcus," she would say. "He's really smart with computers." It was like she felt the need to justify why she was dating someone who didn't match her usual type or social status. At dinner parties with her friends, who were all equally polished women dating equally polished boyfriends in finance or law, Victoria would consistently steer conversations away from my work. Whenever I tried to contribute something about cybersecurity or technology, she would interrupt with comments like, "Let's not bore everyone with tech talk tonight." The dismissiveness in her tone was unmistakable, even though she tried to disguise it as playful teasing. She constantly suggested improvements to my appearance and lifestyle that I couldn't afford on my startup salary. She would point out expensive clothes that would look amazing on me, recommend $150 haircuts at trendy salons downtown, or suggest I hire a personal trainer even though I was already in decent shape. "This jacket would look incredible on you," she would say, while holding up something that cost more than my monthly car payment. When I would politely decline due to the price, she would sigh dramatically and say, "Well, I'm just trying to help you look your best." Some guys actually care about making an effort for their girlfriends. The subtle digs and backhanded compliments were always delivered just skillfully enough that I couldn't call them out without sounding overly sensitive or insecure. She would say things like, "That shirt actually looks better on you than most things in your wardrobe," or "Your friend Kevin really knows how to clean up well when he wants to. You could learn something from his style." Each comment would get under my skin and stick there, but I kept brushing them off as constructive criticism rather than recognizing them for the manipulation they actually were. Meanwhile, our startup was hitting critical milestones that should have been cause for celebration. Trevor and I were pulling 17-hour days trying to finalize the algorithm that would secure the full acquisition payment from CyberShield. The algorithm needed to detect manipulated data and cyber intrusions with at least a 91% accuracy rate to meet their strict contract requirements, and we were frustratingly stuck at only 76% accuracy. I was losing sleep every night trying to solve the technical problems that were keeping us from reaching our goal. Our small office had become our second home, with the refrigerator containing nothing but energy drinks and leftover Chinese takeout containers. My desk was completely covered in handwritten notes, empty granola bar wrappers, and multiple monitors displaying endless lines of code. I had started keeping a change of clothes at the office for the nights when I didn't make it home at all. My poor Civic Si sat neglected in the office parking garage, and I realized at one point that I hadn't even driven it in 3 weeks. When I finally did take it out, there was a layer of dust so thick on the hood that I could literally write my name in it with my finger. Victoria's patience with my demanding work schedule was wearing dangerously thin with each passing week. "I didn't sign up to date a ghost," she would snap, whenever I had to cancel our dinner plans or postpone a weekend trip due to urgent deadlines. My ex never put his job before me like this. I kept telling myself that things would get better once the acquisition was complete and we could finally relax. But deep down, I was starting to wonder if that was really true. My parents noticed the dramatic change in my appearance and energy levels during our weekly video calls. "You look absolutely exhausted, honey," my mom would say, that familiar worry crease appearing between her eyebrows as she studied my face through the computer screen. My dad was characteristically more direct with his concerns. "Son, is this woman really worth what she's putting you through?" he would ask bluntly. I defended Victoria every single time, insisting that she's just ambitious like me, she understands the hustle and what it takes to succeed. But even as I said those words out loud, I found myself wondering if that was actually true. She certainly understood her own hustle and career ambitions, but mine seemed to be nothing more than an inconvenience that interfered with her social calendar. On a Thursday night, while we were at her apartment, and I was half listening while scrolling through lines of code on my laptop, Victoria mentioned that her friend Sophia needed some help with her photography portfolio. "She's trying to build her wedding photography business from the ground up," Victoria explained, "and she needs some couple shots for her professional website. It's this Saturday at Riverside Park, starting at 3 p.m. I finally looked up from my screen, processing what she was asking of me. This Saturday, Trevor and I had specifically planned to tackle the reference data set issues that were preventing us from reaching our target accuracy rate. We were so incredibly close to a breakthrough that I could practically taste it." Victoria's face immediately hardened when she saw my hesitation, shifting into that cold expression I had come to recognize and dread. "We haven't done anything together in 4 weeks, Marcus," she said, her voice taking on that sharp edge that meant I was in trouble. "It's just a few hours of your precious time. Surely your startup can survive without you for one afternoon." The irony of her complaining about my work hours wasn't lost on me, considering she regularly put in 65-hour weeks herself when she was managing major corporate events. But I was genuinely tired of fighting about this constantly, and even more tired of dealing with the cold shoulder and passive-aggressive comments that would inevitably follow if I said no. "Fine," I said, closing my laptop with more force than necessary. "I'll meet you there at 3 p.m. on Saturday." Her demeanor instantly warmed, like someone had flipped a switch. "Perfect! Make sure you wear that gray button-down shirt I bought you for your birthday," she said sweetly. "It actually fits you properly, unlike most of your other clothes." Saturday morning arrived, and I reluctantly texted Trevor to let him know he should start working on the dataset problems without me. Then I spent considerably more time than usual getting ready for this photo shoot, showering carefully, shaving, and putting on the specific gray shirt Victoria had requested. I even added that expensive cologne she had given me for Christmas, the one that smelled like it cost more per ounce than my car insurance. I stopped at the coffee shop near the park to pick up Victoria's usual order, which required 6 different modifications and took the poor barista 3 attempts to get exactly right. As I approached the park's stone bridge where we had agreed to meet, I spotted Sophia setting up her professional camera equipment near the water. Then I saw Victoria, and my entire world shifted in that moment. She wasn't alone. She was with some guy I had never seen before in my life, and they weren't just standing near each other. She was completely wrapped around him, her arms draped over his shoulders, his hands positioned confidently on her waist, their faces positioned just inches apart as Sophia directed them through different poses. This guy looked like he had walked straight out of the pages of Men's Health magazine, with perfect stubble, a trendy haircut that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a month, and the kind of obvious gym rat physique that comes from dedicated personal training. He was wearing an expensive leather jacket that I immediately recognized, because Victoria had shown me the exact same jacket online just 3 weeks earlier, suggesting that I should invest in my appearance by purchasing something similar. The cognitive dissonance of seeing him wearing the very item she had wanted me to buy was almost overwhelming. I stood there like an idiot, coffee in hand, watching this completely surreal scene unfold before my eyes. It felt like I was having an out-of-body experience, watching someone else's life implode in slow motion. Victoria spotted me after a few minutes and whispered something to the model, who nodded casually and stepped away to check his expensive watch like he had somewhere far more important to be. She walked over to me with that practiced smile plastered on her face, the same expression she used when dealing with difficult clients at work. "Hey, you made it!" she said brightly, taking the coffee directly from my hand without so much as a thank you. I couldn't help but notice that she was wearing the delicate silver bracelet I had given her for our 6-month anniversary, which somehow made this entire situation feel even more surreal and painful. "Who's that?" I asked, nodding toward the male model who was now checking his phone with practiced disinterest, as if this entire situation was just another mundane Tuesday for him. "Oh, that's Blake," Victoria replied casually, sipping her coffee like this was the most normal thing in the world. "He's helping with the shoot today." "And you didn't think to mention this to me beforehand?" I asked, feeling my confusion rapidly shifting toward anger. She rolled her eyes in that exaggerated way she did when she thought I was being unreasonable. "Come on, Marcus. These photos need to look high-end and professional," she explained with theatrical patience. "Sophia's trying to book wealthy clients for her wedding photography business." She gestured vaguely at my entire existence with her free hand. "You're not exactly photogenic material for what she's going for." I was still processing the casual cruelty of what she had just said when Victoria sighed with that same theatrical patience she used when explaining simple concepts to difficult clients. "It's not personal, it's strictly business," she continued, as if that somehow made it better. "Look at Blake and then look at yourself honestly. Which one would actually help Sophia attract more high-paying clients?" She paused to take another sip of her coffee before delivering the final blow. "I mean, those startup hoodies and cargo pants aren't exactly screaming dream wedding to potential brides, are they?" The fact that I wasn't even wearing a hoodie or cargo pants in that moment made her comment even more cutting and deliberately hurtful. I was wearing the exact gray button-down shirt she had specifically requested, the one she claimed actually fit me properly. Then she actually reached out and patted my arm like I was a disappointed child who needed consoling. "You can wait at the coffee shop across the street if you want," she suggested with dismissive generosity. "We'll only be another hour or so with the actual photogenic shots." She paused, then added with barely concealed irritation, "Or you can head back to your coding thing with Trevor. I know that's what you'd rather be doing anyway, right?" Her tone was so casually dismissive, so effortlessly cruel, that something fundamental inside me just completely shut down in that moment. I stared at her with perfect clarity, seeing exactly who she really was for the first time in our entire relationship. It was like one of those magic eye puzzles from the 1990s suddenly snapping into sharp focus after months of looking at meaningless patterns. "No," I said quietly, my voice surprisingly steady. "No what?" she asked, already turning back toward Blake and Sophia, clearly expecting me to simply accept this humiliation and wait obediently nearby. "No, I won't be waiting at the coffee shop," I replied calmly. Without another word, I turned and walked straight to my Civic Si without looking back once. Behind me, Victoria called out something, but her words didn't register in my brain. They were just background noise. like the traffic on the nearby street or the children laughing on the playground equipment. I fired up the VTC engine that she had always complained was too loud and obnoxious for a grown man, and drove away from that park. There was no squealing of tires, no dramatic Hollywood exit, just a calm, deliberate departure from a situation I should have left months earlier. On the drive home, I felt eerily calm, like I had been given some kind of emotional anesthetic that numbed all the pain I should have been feeling. My brain kept replaying specific moments from our 18-month relationship with startling new clarity. All those times she had compared me unfavorably to other men, all the subtle suggestions for improvements to my appearance, all the moments when she seemed genuinely embarrassed to introduce me to her coworkers and friends. A specific memory surfaced from about 4 months into our relationship. We had run into my old college friend Dave at a restaurant downtown, and Dave and I had fallen into an easy, enthusiastic conversation about a cybersecurity project he was working on at his company. After about 12 minutes of technical discussion, Victoria had politely excused herself to make what she claimed was a quick work call. When she returned to the table, she immediately steered our conversation towards something completely different and seemingly more socially acceptable. Later that night, as we were getting ready for bed, she had commented casually, "Your friend Dave seems really nice, but maybe save the computer talk for when I'm not around next time. No one wants to hear about programming languages and security protocols over dinner, Marcus." At the time, I had felt genuinely embarrassed, like I had somehow broken an important social code that everyone else understood instinctively. Now I recognized that comment for exactly what it had been. She was embarrassed by my passion for something she deemed uncool and socially unacceptable. She wanted me to hide the very thing that made me successful and fulfilled, just so she could feel more comfortable in social situations. When I finally got home to my apartment, I acted with the same methodical focus and systematic approach that I used when debugging a particularly complex piece of code. I immediately blocked Victoria's number on my phone, removed her from all my social media accounts, and called the building management to change the security code to my apartment building. First thing Tuesday morning, I contacted a locksmith to have all my locks changed completely. I took the framed photo of us from my nightstand and dropped it directly into the kitchen trash can. 18 months of what I had thought was a relationship had been erased in approximately 25 minutes. I looked around my apartment, really looked at it carefully for the first time in months. There were the throw pillows Victoria had insisted on buying that served absolutely no functional purpose other than making the couch look more sophisticated. There was the abstract art print she had hung on my living room wall that I'd never particularly liked, but had tolerated because she insisted it pulled the room together, Marcus. I decided to leave all of those things exactly where they were. Those material objects didn't matter to me anymore. What mattered was reclaiming my time, my mental energy, and my personal space from someone who had never truly respected any of those things. Then I opened my laptop and focused entirely on work for the first time in months without any distractions. Without the constant background anxiety of potentially disappointing Victoria, without checking my phone every 30 minutes to see if she had texted, without having to calculate when I needed to leave the office to meet her for dinner, and without wasting mental energy preparing explanations for why I needed more time to complete critical project milestones, I could finally think clearly again. Around 1 a.m., while staring at lines of code with burning, exhausted eyes, I suddenly had a major breakthrough that changed everything. The problem wasn't with our algorithm at all. The issue was with the data set we were using to test the algorithm's effectiveness. Trevor and I had been so intensely focused on improving the detection system itself that we hadn't thought to question whether our test images were properly categorized and labeled in the first place. Our algorithm was actually detecting subtle lighting inconsistencies and compression artifacts that we had mistakenly tagged as authentic, unaltered images. I completely restructured the entire testing framework from the ground up, retagged the entire dataset with proper metadata for lighting conditions, compression levels, and image source information, and ran the tests again with the corrected parameters. The accuracy rate jumped dramatically from our stuck at 76% all the way up to an impressive 93.2%, which was well above CyberShield's required 91% threshold. I immediately texted Trevor, despite the late hour. Found the problem. Validation dataset was corrupted with incorrect tags. Fixed it, and we're now running at 93.2% accuracy. His response came back within seconds. Holy shit, are you serious? For real this time? I worked straight through the rest of the night, meticulously documenting all the changes I had made, preparing a comprehensive demonstration for CyberShield's technical team, and feeling more clear-headed and mentally sharp than I had felt in many months. Around 4 a.m., I finally crashed on my couch, not even making it to my bedroom, but I slept more soundly and peacefully than I had in over a year. By the following morning, Victoria had clearly realized that I was completely serious about cutting all contact. The desperate barrage began in earnest. Text messages bounced back as undeliverable, so she switched to email with increasingly dramatic and manipulative subject lines. "Are you seriously ghosting me over this?" Followed by, "This is completely childish, Marcus." Then, "We need to talk ASAP about what happened." And finally, "Is your fragile male ego really this damaged by honest feedback?" I ignored every single message and focused entirely on finalizing the acquisition documents with Trevor. We sent the updated algorithm with its dramatically improved performance metrics to CyberShield's technical team, who responded with immediate and enthusiastic approval. The CTO himself sent us a personal email stating, "This exceeds our technical specifications by a significant margin. Our legal team will expedite the final payment processing." Just 3 days later, both Trevor's and my bank accounts each increased by exactly $2.1 million. My phone immediately blew up with congratulatory messages from friends and former colleagues who had seen the press release announcing our successful acquisition. Interestingly, not a single person mentioned Victoria in their messages. I hadn't told anyone what had happened at the photo shoot yet, but I was starting to realize that maybe her behavior toward me hadn't been as subtle as I had thought. I called my parents to share the incredible news with them. My dad's voice actually cracked with emotion when I told him the final acquisition amount. "I always knew you were brilliant, son," he said, and I could hear him fighting back tears. "Your mom and I are so damn proud of everything you've accomplished." My mom got on the phone extension and immediately started talking about investment diversification strategies and reminding me not to forget about the significant tax implications of such a large windfall. It was so typically practical and motherly that I couldn't help but smile. Riley called exactly 2 hours later, absolutely screaming with excitement. "Holy crap! My little brother is officially a millionaire!" she shouted into the phone. "I want a Tesla for Christmas, and I'm not even kidding!" I laughed for what felt like the first time in ages. "What about a nice, practical Honda instead?" I suggested. "I hear they're very reliable and economical." "Seriously, though," she said, her voice softening with genuine emotion. "I am so incredibly proud of you, Marcus. You and Trevor absolutely deserve this success. You both worked your asses off for years to make this happen." I almost told her about the Victoria situation right then, but I decided to hold back. That conversation could wait for another day when I was ready to process it fully. On day 4 after the photo shoot incident, Victoria showed up at my apartment building in person, clearly escalating her desperate attempts to contact me. Marcus, the security guard I had befriended over the past year with weekly coffee deliveries for the entire building staff, called up to my apartment to warn me about the situation. "There's a woman down here insisting she needs to see you immediately," he said in a concerned tone. "Says her name is Victoria and claims it's some kind of emergency." "Don't let her up," I replied without hesitation. "She's not welcome in this building anymore." "You got it," Marcus responded professionally, then added with obvious concern, "She's making quite a scene down here in the lobby. Should I call the police if this continues?" "Give her one clear warning that she needs to leave the property," I instructed. "If she doesn't comply after that, then yes, please call them." I watched from my apartment window as Victoria's white Audi sat stubbornly in the visitor's parking lot for almost 2 full hours before she finally drove away. Marcus called me later that evening to fill me in on what had transpired after I hung up. Apparently, she had tried to convince him that she had left vital prescription medication in my apartment and dispersed access for health reasons. Marcus, who had observed her coming and going regularly for 18 months without any mention of medical conditions or emergencies, didn't buy her story for a second. The building manager later informed me that Victoria had tried multiple manipulation tactics, including crying dramatically to gain sympathy, then switching to veiled threats about calling her attorney cousin who supposedly specialized in tenant rights. When none of her theatrical performances worked, building management eventually had to threaten police involvement before she finally left the premises. On day 5, Victoria's best friend Vanessa, accidentally, ran into me at my regular coffee shop downtown. I saw her enter the cafe, scan the entire room methodically, then put on an overly surprised facial expression when she spotted me at my usual corner table. Vanessa and I had always gotten along reasonably well during group social events. but I knew without question that her primary loyalty was to Victoria, not to me. Marcus, what a coincidence running into you here, she said with fake enthusiasm, sliding uninvited into the chair directly across from me. We've all been so worried about you. Victoria is absolutely devastated by whatever happened between you two. There must have been some huge misunderstanding that can be cleared up if you just talk to her. I closed my laptop deliberately and looked directly at Vanessa with complete seriousness. There was no misunderstanding whatsoever, I said clearly. Victoria was perfectly clear about how she sees me and what she thinks I'm worth. But that's not your problem to solve, Vanessa. I gathered my belongings and stood up to leave. Have a good day, I added politely, ignoring her calls for me to wait as I walked directly to my car without looking back. My phone buzzed with a text from Trevor as I was driving home. CyberShield wants to meet this Thursday to discuss next steps and future collaboration opportunities. You available? Absolutely, I replied immediately, then added, by the way, I broke up with Victoria last weekend. 3 dots appeared on my screen almost instantly, followed by Trevor's response. Finally! She was awful to you, man! Call me later and tell me what happened! That simple, direct validation from my best friend and business partner meant more to me than he probably realized at the time. On day 6, I received an unexpected phone call from Victoria's father, Vincent. I almost declined the call, but curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to answer. Marcus. His tone was clipped and professional, the same voice he used during business negotiations. I understand there's been some kind of situation between you and my daughter. That's correct, I replied, matching his formal, business-like tone exactly. Victoria is quite upset about this whole thing, he continued. She says you've completely cut off all contact without any explanation after some minor photography session misunderstanding. I actually laughed out loud despite the seriousness of the conversation. Is that really what she told you happened? She said you overreacted to her helping a friend with some professional photos, he replied, clearly repeating Victoria's version of events. Did she mention replacing me with a male model because I wasn't attractive enough for her friend's portfolio? I asked directly. Did she mention telling me to wait at a coffee shop across the street while she posed with him because I'm apparently not what brides are looking for in their dream wedding photos? There was a long, uncomfortable silence on the line before Vincent spoke again. That's not the version I heard from her. I'm not surprised by that, I replied calmly. She told me I overreacted to her helping a friend with professional photos, right? Vincent, with all due respect, I continued, does that honestly sound like rational behavior to you? I just successfully closed a multi-million-dollar acquisition deal for my company. Do you really think I would storm off and end an 18-month relationship over absolutely nothing? Multi-million? The genuine surprise in his voice told me everything I needed to know about what Victoria had been telling her family about my career. Victoria mentioned that your startup was doing okay, but she implied it was a fairly small operation. CyberShield acquired our technology for $4.2 million total, I explained. The deal closed earlier this week. Another long, thoughtful silence followed before he spoke again. I see. That puts things in a different perspective. Your daughter made her opinion of me very clear that day, I said firmly. I've simply chosen to believe her honest assessment and move on with my life accordingly. I understand completely, he said carefully. For what it's worth, she's always had her mother's more superficial tendencies when it comes to judging people. I had hoped she would outgrow them as she matured. I had nothing constructive to add to that observation, so we exchanged politely curt goodbyes and ended the call. 25 minutes later, I received an email from Sophia, the photographer from that disastrous park shoot. Marcus, Victoria doesn't know I'm sending these photos to you, she wrote in the subject line. I'm absolutely horrified by what happened that day. I never would have agreed to participate in this situation if I'd known what she was planning. I'm so sorry about everything. Attached to her email were dozens of photos from the park shoot, and I opened them with a mixture of curiosity and dread. Most of the images were standard portfolio shots of Victoria and Blake posing together in various romantic configurations that would appeal to potential wedding clients. But there was a series of photos at the very end that made my blood run completely cold as I scrolled through them. Sophia had inadvertently captured my entire arrival at the park in photographic detail. There was the moment when Victoria first spotted me approaching with her coffee, the exact instant when she pulled me aside for our private conversation, and most damning of all, her facial expression as she delivered her not camera material speech with casual cruelty. The final shots in the sequence showed my face going completely blank and emotionless as I processed what she had said, followed by me turning to walk away while Victoria rolled her eyes dismissively behind me, clearly annoyed that I wasn't simply accepting her humiliation gracefully. I downloaded all the photos to my computer, then replied to Sophia with a brief message. "Thank you for your honesty and for sending these. I appreciate you reaching out." That same afternoon, I received a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. "Hello, is this Marcus Patterson?" asked a professional-sounding woman. "Yes, this is Marcus," I replied cautiously. "My name is Patricia Wells, and I'm the events director at CyberShield," she explained. "We're finalizing all the arrangements for the acquisition announcement press event next month, and I was hoping to speak with you about coordinating the logistics." I vaguely remembered mentions of a formal public announcement in our original contract, but it hadn't been a priority during the intense technical negotiations. "Of course, how can I help you with that?" "We typically coordinate a joint press release with professional photos of the acquisition team and the founding partners," Patricia explained. "We're working with Elite Events since they handle most of our major corporate events and press conferences. The coordinator there, Victoria Taylor, mentioned that she knows you personally, so I wanted to ask if we should include her directly in these email communications for your convenience." My stomach dropped as the implications hit me immediately. I had no idea that Victoria's company worked with CyberShield, and she had never once mentioned this connection during our entire relationship. "Actually, Miss Wells, that won't be necessary at all," I said carefully. "Miss Taylor and I are no longer affiliated in any capacity. It would be much better to keep all communications direct between our respective teams." "Oh," Patricia paused, clearly processing this information. "That's actually good to know. There have been some challenges in our recent communications with Miss Taylor. She's been quite insistent about handling this particular event personally, even though it would normally be assigned to one of her colleagues. Now everything was starting to click into place with perfect, horrible clarity. Victoria had probably seen this acquisition announcement as her biggest career opportunity yet, managing a high-profile press event for a multi-million-dollar technology acquisition that would generate significant media coverage. And the fact that her boyfriend was one of the founders would make it perfect for her professional image and social media presence. "Miss Wells, may I ask if you're completely satisfied with Elite Events as your event management partner?" I asked carefully. "Between us," Patricia's voice dropped slightly as if she was looking around to make sure no one could overhear her, "we're actually considering other options for future events. There have been some professionalism concerns recently, but nothing has been decided yet." After we ended the call, I sat staring at my computer screen with Sophia's photos still open, showing Victoria's true character in unfiltered detail. A plan began to form in my mind, though I wasn't entirely sure yet how I wanted to proceed. The next morning, Trevor and I met at our office to prepare our comprehensive technical presentation for CyberShield's executive team. We needed to demonstrate our algorithm's effectiveness using real-world examples that would showcase its ability to detect manipulated images and verify authentic content. "I have some perfect, authentic, unaltered photos we can use as test cases," I told him, sending over Sophia's files that clearly showed Victoria's face. Trevor's eyebrows shot up as he opened the images on his computer. "Dude, is that Victoria in these photos? What the hell happened between you two?" I explained the entire photo shoot situation to him in detail, from the setup to Victoria's cruel dismissal. Trevor had never been Victoria's biggest fan, but even he seemed shocked by the level of calculated cruelty involved. "That's absolutely ice cold, man," he said, scrolling through the images that documented the whole incident. "Are you sure you want to use these particular photos for the presentation, though?" "They're perfect test cases," I explained logically. "Authentic, unaltered images captured in natural lighting conditions with multiple subjects. Our algorithm correctly identifies them as 100% genuine with no manipulation detected. We won't use any names in the presentation, just referring to them as Subject V and Subject B for anonymity." We spent the morning preparing a flawless technical demonstration, embedding the park photos alongside other test cases that would showcase our algorithm's capabilities. The presentation would be viewed by CyberShield's entire executive team, including their CEO, CTO, and several board members, who would be making decisions about future partnerships and collaborations. What I hadn't mentioned to Trevor was that I had done some additional research on CyberShield's corporate event spending. They invested approximately $4 million annually on executive retreats, industry conferences, and press events, with the majority of these high-value contracts being handled by Elite Events. Victoria had recently been promoted to Senior Corporate Event Manager, making her responsible for managing their biggest and most prestigious accounts. She had mentioned the promotion to me months ago, but had never specified which particular accounts she was managing. CyberShield was very likely Elite Event's largest and most valuable client, representing Victoria's biggest career opportunity and the foundation of her professional reputation in the events industry. The day of our crucial presentation finally arrived, and the CyberShield executives filed into their main conference room one by one. There were 12 people in total, including Dr. Adam Langston, the CTO who had been our primary technical contact throughout the acquisition process. I immediately recognized Patricia Wells from our phone conversations, a sharp-looking woman in her 40s with short silver hair and distinctive bright blue glasses that gave her an authoritative appearance. Trevor and I delivered what I can honestly say was a flawless demonstration of our algorithm's capabilities. We walked through every aspect of the technology, from the initial detection protocols to the final verification processes, answering technical questions with confidence and precision. When we reached the section specifically focused on authentic image verification, the park photos appeared prominently on the large conference room screen. Victoria's face was clearly visible as she explained to me why I wasn't suitable camera material, captured in perfect digital detail by Sophia's professional equipment. None of the executives reacted visibly to the photos during the presentation, which made complete sense. Why would they? To them, these were simply anonymous test data points demonstrating our algorithm's effectiveness at verifying unaltered images. They had no way of knowing the personal context or the cruel conversation that had been captured in those moments. After our presentation concluded and the formal Canada session ended, CyberShield's CTO Dr. Langston approached me privately while the other executives were discussing logistics with Trevor. "Those park photos in the authentic image verification section," he said thoughtfully. "The woman in them looks somewhat familiar to me." My heart started pounding, but I kept my facial expression completely neutral and professional. "Oh, really?" I replied casually. "She's actually the event coordinator we've been working with at Elite Events for various corporate functions. Victoria something. Taylor, I believe?" I supplied helpfully. "Yes, that's exactly right," Dr. Langston said, his eyebrows raising slightly with recognition. "I see." He glanced back at the presentation screen where the images were still displayed, then looked at me with what seemed like newfound understanding. "Well, Mr. Patterson, I certainly appreciate your candor throughout this entire process," he said carefully. "And I must say, the effectiveness of your verification technology is quite illuminating in ways I hadn't initially considered." He didn't say anything else specific about the photos, but I caught him speaking quietly with Patricia Wells in the corner of the room before the executives began filing out. I wasn't entirely sure what would come of this interaction, if anything at all, but I had accomplished what I set out to do. I had shown them the unfiltered truth about Victoria's character, captured in authentic, unaltered images. Exactly what our algorithm was designed to detect and verify. 4 days later, Patricia Wells called me again with an update. "Marcus, I wanted to let you know that we've made the decision to move all of our event services to Premier Management Group, effective immediately," she informed me professionally. "Would you and Trevor be available to speak with their team next week about the announcement requirements and logistics?" "Of course we'd be happy to work with them," I replied. "May I ask what prompted this change in event management companies?" "Let's just say we had some significant concerns about consistent professionalism and transparency with our previous vendor," Patricia said diplomatically. "We highly value business partners who demonstrate integrity in all their professional interactions." I ended the call with a strange but satisfying sense of justice. I hadn't actively tried to sabotage Victoria's career or orchestrate her professional downfall. I had simply allowed her true character to be seen clearly by people who were in positions to make informed decisions about business partnerships. The consequences that followed were entirely natural results of her own actions and choices. That evening, I decided to go for a long, therapeutic drive in my Civic Si, taking the winding roads outside the city that I used to enjoy before my life became so complicated with work stress and relationship drama. I drove with the windows down and the engine humming smoothly, with no particular destination in mind. For the first time in what felt like years, I felt completely and utterly free from the weight of other people's expectations and judgments. A full week passed before the complete consequences of my actions fully manifested. I was working late at our new office space, finalizing some technical documentation, when my phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. My thumb hovered over the decline button for several seconds before curiosity won out, and I decided to answer. "You calculated, vindictive jerk!" Victoria's voice came through the speaker, trembling with barely controlled rage. You deliberately destroyed everything I worked for, Marcus! Victoria, I started to respond, but she immediately cut me off. CyberShield canceled their entire contract with Elite Events, she shouted. Do you have any idea what you've done to me? That account was worth millions of dollars in revenue over multiple years. My commission alone from that contract was going to be over $150,000 annually. I remained silent and let her continue her increasingly desperate tirade, each accusation revealing more about her motivations and character than she probably realized. They showed me the photos from your technical presentation, she continued, her voice cracking with emotion. You planned this entire thing from the very beginning, didn't you? You used me for your pathetic little revenge fantasy. What kind of man does something like this? Her tone shifted abruptly from rage to complete desperation. They fired me, Marcus. 5 years of building my career at Elite Events, completely gone because of your vindictive actions. My entire reputation in this industry is completely ruined now. That seems like a natural consequence of your own actions and choices, I replied calmly. You have to fix this immediately, she pleaded, her voice now taking on a begging quality that I had never heard from her before. Please, Marcus, I'm begging you to call CyberShield and tell them it was all a misunderstanding. Tell them that I was just trying to help a friend with her photography business. Tell them, goodbye, Victoria, I said firmly, and immediately blocked this new number as well. 3 days later, Victoria's mother, Catherine, showed up at my office completely unannounced. My assistant, Karen, looked visibly uncomfortable as she escorted the elegant but clearly agitated woman into my private office. Marcus, Catherine began, declining my polite offer of water or coffee. I know my daughter hurt you badly. I'm not here to make excuses for her behavior or to pretend that what she did was acceptable. I waited silently, curious about where this conversation was heading. Victoria finally told us what really happened at that photography session, she continued, twisting her wedding ring nervously. I'm genuinely ashamed of how she treated you. That's not how we raised her to behave toward people who care about her. Catherine paused for a moment, clearly gathering her courage before continuing. But she's absolutely desperate now, Marcus, she said, her voice heavy with maternal worry. She can't find work anywhere in the event planning industry. No one will even consider hiring her after the CyberShield incident became known throughout the professional community. She's been having panic attacks almost daily, and she's seriously talking about moving back home with us because she can't afford her apartment anymore. I waited patiently, saying nothing and letting her speak. I'm not asking you to reconcile with her romantically, Catherine continued quickly, clearly wanting to make that point crystal clear. I would never ask that of you after what she put you through. But I'm wondering if you could possibly consider speaking with someone at CyberShield, maybe giving her some kind of professional reference that might help her rebuild her career somehow. I considered this woman, who had always treated me with genuine kindness and respect, despite her daughter's obvious disdain for me throughout our relationship. Catherine had consistently welcomed me into their family home during holidays and gatherings, asked thoughtful questions about my family and my work, and seemed genuinely interested in my life and goals. She didn't deserve to suffer because of her daughter's choices. I'll think about it seriously, I said finally. That's all I can promise you right now, but I will genuinely consider it. After Catherine left my office, I received yet another email from Sophia later that same day. Marcus, I don't know if you care about this anymore, but Victoria's been telling everyone who will listen that you plotted to destroy her career because she gently suggested you weren't the right fit for my photography portfolio, she wrote. She's playing the victim to anyone who will listen to her sob story. I've been telling people the actual truth about what happened and showing them the real photos from that day when they ask. Most of our mutual friends have seen through her manipulation, but she's getting increasingly desperate and her stories keep getting more dramatic. I immediately forwarded this email to Catherine with a brief accompanying note. Before I consider helping Victoria in any way, I need to know that she's being completely honest about what actually happened, even now when she's facing consequences. Catherine's response arrived just 2 hours later. I understand your position completely. I'll have a serious conversation with her about this immediately. The following week, as Trevor and I were busy preparing for our official relocation to CyberShield's headquarters in their downtown facility, my assistant Karen announced that I had another unexpected visitor. Victoria herself is here, she said, clearly aware of the entire situation from previous conversations. Should I call building security? I sighed deeply, knowing this confrontation was probably inevitable. No, just send her in. But give her exactly 3 minutes. Then interrupt us regardless of what's happening. Victoria walked into my office looking absolutely terrible. Her usually perfect appearance was disheveled. Her makeup was smudged like she'd been crying, and she looked like she hadn't slept properly in days. 3 minutes, I said firmly as she sat down in the chair across from my desk. That's all you get. She nodded, her hands clasped tightly in her lap like a child, about to confess to breaking something valuable. I deserve everything that's happened to me, she said quietly. That definitely wasn't what I had expected to hear from her. Mom showed me your email with Sophia's message about what I've been telling people, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Sophia's absolutely right. I have been lying to everyone, trying to save face and make myself look like the victim in this situation. Victoria's voice cracked with genuine emotion. What I did to you that day was unforgivably cruel. I was shallow and status-obsessed and completely horrible. I treated you like you weren't good enough for me, when the truth is that you were always way too good for someone like me. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her already ruined makeup even more. I'm not asking you to forgive me or to help me fix this mess I created. I just wanted to come here and finally tell you the complete truth for once. I'm so sorry, Marcus. I'm so incredibly sorry for everything I put you through. I opened my desk drawer and removed a business card, sliding it across the polished surface toward her. Patricia Wells at CyberShield, I said simply. Call her tomorrow morning. Tell her that I suggested you reach out regarding the junior coordinator position that just opened up at their Dallas office. It's a significant step down from what you had before, but it would be a fresh start. Victoria stared at the business card in complete disbelief, like she couldn't quite process what was happening. Why would you possibly help me after everything I did to you? I'm not doing this for you, I replied honestly. I'm doing it because carrying around anger and resentment is emotionally exhausting, and I have much better things to focus my energy on. As she stood up to leave, clutching the business card like a lifeline, I added one final condition. Victoria, this is your one and only chance. If I hear that you've mentioned my name inappropriately or tried to leverage this connection beyond this single introduction, the opportunity disappears completely. Do you understand me? She nodded emphatically, tears streaming down her face. I understand. Thank you so much, Marcus. Thank you. After she left my office, Trevor appeared in my doorway within minutes, clearly having witnessed her departure. Everything okay in here? Yeah, I said, turning back to my computer and the technical documentation I'd been working on. Just tying up some loose ends from the past. You're a much better man than I am, Trevor commented thoughtfully. I probably would have let her crash and burn completely without any help. I shrugged, not really sure how to explain my decision. Sometimes the best revenge isn't actively trying to destroy someone. Sometimes it's just moving forward successfully with your own life while they're stuck looking backward at their mistakes. Later that evening, I called Patricia Wells to give her a professional heads up about Victoria potentially reaching out. I was extremely careful to remain objective and businesslike in my explanation. I'm not personally vouching for her work quality or professional abilities, I explained clearly. I'm simply suggesting that you might consider her for the junior position if she contacts you. I believe that people deserve second chances when they genuinely acknowledge their mistakes and take responsibility for their actions. I appreciate your candor throughout this entire process, Marcus, Patricia replied. And frankly, your compassion in this situation says a great deal about your character. We'll certainly consider her application if she reaches out. My dad called me that weekend, ostensibly to discuss various investment strategies and financial planning options. But I could tell he was really calling to check on my emotional well-being. I had finally told both my parents about the breakup with Victoria, though I hadn't gone into all the specific details about what had transpired. Your mom's been worried about you, he said in that indirect way that was classic dad code for, I'm actually the one who's worried but don't want to admit it directly. I'm doing really well, Dad. Better than I have in a long time, actually, I assured him. You know, when I was teaching high school chemistry, I had this one student, my dad began, settling into what I recognized as one of his thoughtful parables. Brilliant kid, but he came from a terrible home life. Every single time this boy would make real academic progress or achieve something significant, his parents would immediately tear him down and tell him he was getting too big for his britches and needed to remember his place. Dad cleared his throat in that way he did when he was getting to the important part of a story. Some people simply can't stand to see other people succeed and thrive. When they encounter someone who's doing well, their first instinct is to try to diminish that person's accomplishments. It says everything about their character and absolutely nothing about the person they're trying to tear down. Thanks, Dad, I said, genuinely touched by his awkward but heartfelt attempt at providing emotional support and perspective. That actually helps more than you know. So, about those index funds we discussed, he said, smoothly transitioning back to the safer territory of financial planning. And just like that, we were back to the comfortable, practical conversations that defined our relationship. 4 months later, I attended a major technology conference in Boston as a featured speaker, which was a surreal experience considering where I'd been just a year earlier. I decided to drive my Civic Si there because I still absolutely refused to sell it, even though I could now easily afford any car I wanted. I had finally taken it to get professionally detailed, and the small scratch on the rear bumper had been repaired so perfectly that the championship white paint matched seamlessly. When I pulled up to the conference hotel, the valet attendant actually whistled appreciatively. "Sweet ride, man!" "Is that a Type R?" he asked with genuine enthusiasm. "Si," I corrected him. 2015 model year. "Nice! Those K24 engines are absolutely bulletproof," he replied knowledgeably. "My brother has one with 180,000 miles on it, and it's still running strong as the day he bought it." Inside the conference venue, the atmosphere was buzzing with activity and excitement. Our algorithm had gained significant attention throughout the tech industry since the CyberShield acquisition, with several major companies already licensing the technology for their own security applications. 3 years ago, I would have felt completely out of place and intimidated among these technology industry leaders and innovators. My presentation on the ethical implications of deep fake detection technology went absolutely perfectly. The main auditorium was packed with over 400 people, including Trevor sitting prominently in the front row, giving me encouraging thumbs up throughout the talk. The live demonstration of our algorithm drew audible gasps and reactions from the crowd, and the sustained applause afterward felt completely genuine rather than politely obligatory. During the Conda session, someone asked a technically sophisticated question about our algorithm's capability for handling contextual inconsistencies in manipulated media. As I was providing a detailed answer, my phone buzzed with a text message from my assistant Karen. Premier Management Group called about the Innovation Awards ceremony next month. They wanted to know if you're planning to attend as one of the nominees. I smiled slightly, remembering that Victoria's former company Elite Events had lost CyberShield's lucrative business to Premier Management Group. Patricia Wells had mentioned in passing during one of our recent conversations that Victoria had indeed taken the junior position in Dallas and was apparently doing well so far in her fresh start. 7 months after the breakup, I moved into a modest but comfortable house in a quiet residential neighborhood. It featured 4 bedrooms, a small but well-maintained yard, and most importantly to me, a proper 2-car garage where my Civic Si could be stored safely and maintained properly. Trevor came by with his new girlfriend to help me celebrate the housewarming, bringing an expensive bottle of champagne for the occasion. Here's to someone I watched eat ramen noodles 3 meals a day just to make rent and keep the startup funded, Trevor said, raising his glass in a toast. To someone who still chooses to eat ramen by choice even though he's now a millionaire. To understanding what actually matters in life, I responded, raising my own glass to meet his. 4 weeks later, I received a brief professional email from Victoria. "I wanted you to know that I'm working hard at the junior position and taking it seriously. Thank you for giving me the second chance I didn't deserve." I read the message but didn't respond to it. Not every story needs a dramatic Hollywood ending or perfect closure where everyone reconciles and becomes friends again. Sometimes the best possible conclusion is simply people learning from their mistakes, growing as individuals, and moving forward with their lives in healthier directions. That night, I drove home in my Honda Civic Si with its now scratch-free rear bumper to my modest house where I finally felt completely at peace with who I was and what I had accomplished. I had never been happier to be deemed not camera material by someone whose opinion ultimately didn't matter at all.